Hi, in this video we will learn how to work with JSON in Instadeq. If you go to instadeq.com/blog/guides, you can find many guides that are about Instadeq, like make a dashboard from a JSON file, how to load data from JSON file, and supported JSON table formats. If you're just getting started, you can try this without an account. Just go to app.instadeq.com, click try it now. We have some examples where you can follow. If you create a new card by clicking this button that is between all cards in a deck and go to the examples tab, there's one called read mine issue dashboard from JSON file. There's another one called JSON file to chart. The SpaceX HTTP API chart guide also uses JSON, as well as the PubNub stream, but that's streaming and it's not like tabular data, it's just one event per update. But you can follow all of this and to have a better understanding of how to work with JSON on Instadeq. We support different JSON formats and you can use. Some of them we detect the structure and present them directly as a table, and the supported formats are in the supported JSON table format. We're going to see them in detail. You can download them. Here on each section there's an example for that format and a snippet showing the structure. The first one is the most common one, array of objects. The root is an array and it has objects which share the keys. Each key is, in a sense, the value of a column, and they are flat and they are not nested. If Instadeq detects this format, it will present it as a table, as well as all the others we are going to see. Object with columns and rows keys. This is at the root an object that has two attributes, one with one of these names, C, calls, columns, or labels, and the other one, and it's an array of strings. And these are the name of the columns. The other one is a field called either R, rows, or items, and it's an array of arrays where each internal array is each value in the same order as they appear in the columns. The next one is object with columns as keys. This is at the root an object that has keys. Each key is a column, and the value is an array with all the values for that column. So basically it's like a table rotated 90 degrees, if you can picture it in this way. The next one is array of arrays with headers as first row. So it's like what you would do if you were trying to encode a CSV as JSON. You have at the root an array. The first item is an array of strings with the names of the columns, and the rest are arrays with the values in the same order. The next one is an array of arrays without headers. It's the same as the previous one, but where the first row is not an array of strings. It has mixed values. So Instadeq will guess that those are not names because they are values that are not strings. So it will give default column names for the columns. And the last one is array of columns as pairs. It's at the root an array that has arrays of two items. The first one is a string, which is the name of the column, and the second is an array with all the values. So it's similar to this one, object with columns as keys, but instead of being a key value pair, it's a list of pairs as arrays. So like with any of them, there's an example you can download. Just right click over here and say link as or similar in your browser. And if you have any of these, when you create a new JSON card here, if you drop it like a cells array, if you have the text table and sheet format ticked, it will be displayed as a table. Let's see what happens if I untick that. We will see that's an array of arrays. And the recommendation is to try to have formats that follow one of these and use the detect format. So you already have a table. If you want to do something, like for example, sales by country, you can just drag the columns and it works. But what happens if you have a JSON that doesn't follow that structure. Here I have an example called sales tree. Let's see the structure. Even when this is enabled, the text table and sheet format is not presented as a table because it's not any of the formats presented here. It has some attributes at the root, one called total and the other called items. Item is an array of objects, pretty similar to the first one over here, but it's not at the root of the object. So in this case, we have to, in some sense, flatten the array by ourselves. So how do we do that? And to do that, we are going to do it by hand, and I will explain now. So I will create, for example, a select so that we can flatten. And if we drag here the fields we want to use, for example, let's say we want amount and country. So I will drag country and it will add the input. And since I dragged the country field on the 9th index of the items array, this is the path that will appear, items 9 country, and I will do the same for amount. So now we have these two, and Instadeq will flatten it into a table. But since we dragged one item, the item with the index number 9 on an array, it's generated just one output row. What we want is to do the same for all the items in this list, because we know that the array has the same fields for all of them. So what we are going to do is click on this index over here, and this menu will appear, presenting us with alternatives that we can use to replace the number 9 over here. And the alternative that it proposes is a range from 0 to infinity. This means all the values. And if I select it, it will ask me if I want to replace the current item with selected. I will say OK. So now it will do that for this, and it will look for all the other inputs that share the same prefix. So they come from the same source and they come from the same list, and it will replace it for all of them. So now in the output we have a table because it's extracting all the amount values from the items array, and it gave a default name, which is kind of the path, items country and items amount. We can rename it by clicking on the input, clicking the edit, and removing the prefix. Let's do the same for country. We can see that the output column names change when we rename the inputs. So now we can, if we want, reorder them either from the output or from the query. And now we can do the same as before. We can do a group by, for example. But as you can see, it requires an intermediate step where we have to manually extract the fields we want from the JSON tree and flatten it by specifying ranges if we are extracting values from an internal array. It's much easier if your data has this structure. If you control the source of the data, it's much easier if you can generate this output. Otherwise, we still support this way of flattening deeply nested paths with ranges. It can even work if you have more than one inner array. As long as all of them generate the same amount of values, it will be flattened into a table. But again, we recommend you to try to stick to the supported JSON formats. Once you have data like this, you can create something like this, and you can create, for example, a bar chart, and you're ready to go. If you want to follow some of the examples, you can go to how to load data from a JSON file into Instadeq. Here I explained a little bit what I explained here, and how to do a complete dashboard, in this case using real data from Redmine, which is an issue tracker, and creating a dashboard step by step. Here's the video and you can follow the steps. Here is the data I used for the guide, so you can use it yourself. And this is here as a guide, and also it's available as an example over here. So yeah, we support JSON. It's not like the core data format for Instadeq, which is tables, but either if you have one of the supported formats, or if you can flatten it as I showed, you can use JSON to create Instadeq visualizations and dashboards. If you have any question, just leave a comment in the comment section below. Bye.